In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and find out the least common multiple between two numbers. Before we go ahead and do that, we have to go over some vocabulary. The word multiples, for example. The multiples of a number are what you get when you multiply it by the other numbers. So basically your times table. So when you multiply 4 times 1, you'll get 4. 4 times 2 gives you 8. 4 times 4 gives you 16. 4 times 5 gives you 20. 4 times 8 gives you 32, etc. All of those products are your multiples. A common multiple is different. A common multiple is what you get when you list the multiples of two numbers and you find multiples that appear in both lists. So if we have like the first few multiples of 4, they are listed here: 4, 8, 12, 16, etc. And the first few multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, 20, etc. You'll notice that in these lists we have two numbers that appear in both lists, and those numbers are 20 and 40. You can see that right over here and right over here. So both of those two numbers are what we call common multiples. But the ultimate goal of this lesson is to find the least common multiple. So just to quickly tell you what that is, the least common multiple is basically the smallest number that appears in both lists. So in our case, the least common multiple of 4 and 5 is going to be 20. That's our LCM. Let's take a look now at two examples. Here, number 1, we're asked to find the LCM of the numbers 6 and 9. And what I like to do is create a T-chart because it kind of helps me keep things neat and in order. So I'm going to go ahead and create a T-chart first. And I'm going to put one number on each side of the T-chart. So I have the 6 and the 9, and what I'm going to basically do is have a race between the two numbers until they both meet up. And that's what I like to call my finish line, which is where we'll find our LCM. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the 6 because it happens to be smaller than the 9. So the first multiple of 6 is 6, because we get that by multiplying 6 times 1. And the second multiple is 12. 6 times 2 gives me 12. And now that I've passed the 9, I'm going to jump over to this side of the T-chart and start listing the multiples of 9. So the first one is 9. The second multiple of 9 is 18. Now I'm going to jump back to the 6. And we got 12 by multiplying 6 times 2, so 6 times 3 will give me 18. And now I can stop because I have found a common multiple. So 18 is a common multiple of 6 and 9. And not only is it a common multiple, it is the smallest common multiple. Therefore, it becomes our LCM. So the LCM of 6 and 9 is 18. Now let's take a look at the second example. Let me switch my colors here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have a race between the 9 and the 15. So I'll create a T-chart, and I'll start, you guessed it, with the 9 because it is smaller. So the first multiple of 9 is 9, like we did over here. The second multiple of 9 is 18. So now I got to jump to the 15. The first multiple of 15 is 15. 15 times 2 gives me 30. Now I jump over to the 9. Well, if I got 18 as my second multiple, then I know that 9 times 3 gives me 27. So that's my next multiple. I got to keep going because I'm not caught up to the 30 yet. And 9 times 4 will give me 36. And now I've caught up to the 30. But we don't have a common multiple yet, so we got to keep going. So the next multiple of 15, well, I know that I got 15 by multiplying times 1. The 30 times 2, so the 15 times 3 is what should give him our next multiple of 45. I've passed the 36, so I jump back over to this list, and I know that 9 times 5 is going to give me my next multiple, which is 45, and there you have it. We have found our common multiple between 9 and 15, and again, it's not just a regular common multiple, it is the least common multiple because it is the first one that they have in common. So we can conclude that our LCM for 9 and 15 is equal to 45. So LCM equals 45. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, well, why is this useful? What am I going to use this for in math? The answer to that is that let's say your teacher gives you two fractions, and they're 1/4 and 3/8. And your teacher asks you to compare these two fractions. So basically tell if it's less than, greater than, or equal to. The only problem with this right here is that we can't do it because the denominators are different. We have a 4 here as a denominator and an 8 there as a denominator. So we can't really compare these two. We have to make the denominators be equal in order to have a fair comparison. And the way we do that is using the least common multiple. So we have a race between those two numbers, the 4 and the 8. So I'm going to list my 4 over here and my 8 there, and pay attention because this is going to really explain to you why we always start with a smaller number when we find the LCM. So the first multiple of 4 is 4. The second multiple of 4 is 8. And here is the reason why we always start with a smaller number, because sometimes you get lucky and you figure out that by just finding the first few couple multiples of the smaller number, you might actually have it match the original number of the other digit. So in our case, we're lucky. 8 is the common multiple. So LCM equals 8. And here's how we use that. We go ahead and we make that our new denominator. So I'm going to turn the 1/4 into something over 8 and the 3/8 into something over 8. And then I can compare them fairly. Now, this one is easy to do because we just ask ourselves now, 8 times what gives us this 8 over here? Well, I know that if I multiply 8 times 1, I'm going to get 8. So what we do to the bottom, we do to the top of a fraction. So 3 times 1 will give me the 3. So this fraction didn't change at all. Now we jump over to the left side, and I ask myself, well, 4 times what gives me 8? I know that if I multiply 4 times 2, I get 8. So what we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So 1 times 2 gives me 2. Now I have two fractions that I can easily compare because they both have denominators that are the same. So 2/8 is obviously smaller than 3/8. So the sign that's going to go in here is less than. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say we're comparing 4/5 to 1/6. Again, we can't really compare these two because they don't have the same denominator, so it wouldn't be fair. So what we'll have to do is find the least common multiple to turn that into our LCD, and that'll be a different lesson, which means least common denominator. So 5 and 6, I'm going to have a race between them. So create your T-chart, and I'll start with the 5. So 5, 10, 15. You should know by now how to find the multiples. 20. I'm just going to list the first couple of each number. 6 is the first multiple of 6. Then we have 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. I'm going to jump over to this because I have nothing in common yet. So 25, 30, 35. And you've probably already seen it. We have a common multiple, and that is the number 30. So that is now my LCM. So LCM equals 30. Now we use that LCM because we're going to have that be our new denominator. So this 4/5 is going to turn into something over 30, and we're going to compare that to something over 30 on this side. So we just ask ourselves, what times 5 gives us 30? And I know that 6 times 5 gives us 30, so what we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So 4 times 6 gives us 24, and that's my new numerator on this side. And then 6 times 5 gives us 30. So what we do to the bottom, we do to the top, and 1 times 5 gives us 5. So now I can compare these two, and I can easily see that the 24/30ths are greater than the 5 over 30. Let's take a look at one last example. Here we have 7/10 being compared to 3/8. We have to make the denominators the same because right now they are different. We have 10 and we have 8. So we're going to go ahead and have our race between these two numbers. So I'm going to put 1 on the left, 1 on the right, and just start listing off the first couple first multiples of each one. So we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Those are the first few multiples of 10. The first multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. And you probably can already spot it because I'm sure you've gotten very good at this by the end of this lesson, that we have a common multiple, and that is the number 40. So I can say safely that my LCM is equal to 40. So LCM is 40. And what this means is that now that the LCM, that we know that the LCM is 40, we can say that the 40 here will become our new denominator. So we can actually just call this our least common denominator, which is LCD. So if the LCM is 40 and we're working with fractions and comparing them, then it automatically becomes our LCD as well. So we're going to go ahead and use that and make it our new denominator of 40, and we're going to compare now the two fractions. Let's first find the numerators. So we ask ourselves, well, what times 10 gives us 40? And I know that 10 times 4 gives us 40, so I multiply the top by 4 as well. 7 times 4 gives me 28. 8 times 5 gives me the 40, so 3 times 5 gives me 15. And now I can compare the two because I found my LCM of 40, which is also my LCD in this situation. So the sign or symbol that goes in the comparison circle is going to be the symbol of greater than, because the mouse, as you remember, always eats the bigger number. And there you have it. That is how you find the LCM and also the LCD to be able to fairly compare two fractions with unlike denominators.